Welcome back to the Deep Dive. If you are joining us today, you better hold on to your irradiated butt because we are leaving the capital wasteland far behind, literally and philosophically, like way, way behind.
Oh, yeah. Today, our mission is nothing less than interplanetary travel. We are conducting an intensive, source-based investigation into the glorious, messy, and deeply divisive final add-on for Fallout 3, the infamous Mothership Zeta.
Infamous is right, and we're not just talking plot points here, are we?
No. We are dissecting years, literally years, of community opinion, scrutinizing the highly contentious lore implications, and figuring out, definitively if we can, how a game rooted in post-nuclear, retro-futuristic Americana ended up launching a cowboy and a samurai into deep orbit. It's a leap.
It's a spectacular, almost jarring shift in tone, isn't it? The sources we pulled today are, well, they're all over the map. We've got Bethesda's original design docs, their official descriptions, detailed wiki entries on the Zetans themselves.
Oh yeah, the wiki dives are intense on this one.
And crucially, a massive stack of incredibly polarized fan discussions. Seriously, people either love this thing or they absolutely hate it.
It's true. This deep dive immediately reveals a major schism among players. You either adore Mothership Zeta for its pure, schlocky, unapologetic, B-movie, sci-fi vibe, the ultimate change of pace.
Which, to be fair, can be fun.
Right. Or you absolutely despise it. You see it as linear, boring, maybe even a potentially lore-shattering chore that strips away everything you love about the actual Fallout open-world experience. There's not much middle ground.
It really feels like high-stakes analysis then, because this DLC fundamentally challenges the player's connection to that world they've spent, like, dozens, maybe hundreds of hours in.
Absolutely. And look, before we commit entirely to this voyage, I do have to enthusiastically share, seriously, we're buzzing about this. We are already neck deep in research and recording for our next major focus.
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna be Fallout 4. We are generating extensive detail, pulling apart the Commonwealth from the absolute moment that vault door creaks open.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
Synths, settlements, Preston Garvey. Okay, maybe not too much Preston Garvey.
We'll try to keep it balanced. But seriously, we absolutely cannot wait to dive into that content with all of you. It's going to be huge.
We're super excited.
Yeah.
But first, we got to deal with the little green man who started this whole cosmic mess.
Yeah.
Or maybe they didn't. That's part of the debate, right?
Exactly. Our mission here today is to synthesize this mountain of conflicting source material, sift through the arguments, the praise, the complaints,
and give you the comprehensive shortcut you need to truly understand the Mothership Zeta phenomenon.
Oh.
Okay, let's do it. Let's unpack this moment where Fallout 3 went full throttle into, like, pulpy, weird science fiction. Right. Okay, Section 1, the abduction itself. Let's start with that immediate forced removal from everything you know. Unlike almost every other major journey in Fallout 3, where you choose to travel, you hop on Dutch's Gambit, you volunteer for Anchorage.
You make a conscious decision, yeah.
Here, Mothership Zeta begins with an unequivocal, nope, sorry buddy, you're coming with us. Zero choice involved.
That's right. The quest, it's perfectly titled Not of This World, kicks off when you stumble across this unintelligible, highly distorted radio transmission, it sounds like. Alien gibberish, basically.
And following that signal doesn't lead you to some hidden bunker or a new raider camp. No, it leads the lone wanderer straight to a crashed Zetan recon craft. It's designated Theta.
Now, previous Fallout games, they had subtle hints, right? Little crash saucers tucked away as Easter eggs, fun little nods.
Yeah, just little jokes almost.
But here, oh no. The moment the player gets close enough to this Theta craft, boom! The skies literally open up. A massive blue-white tractor beam just snatches you right off the ground.
And the sources we looked at specifically contrast the starting point with all the other DLCs. It's a complete, instantaneous removal from the familiar Capital Wasteland sandbox. You have no say.
It's designed explicitly to throw you into an utterly claustrophobic, completely unfamiliar environment. The official descriptions even say it's very different from the Capital Wasteland to explore.
Understatement of the century, maybe?
Probably. And there's no turning back. 1 second you're kicking cans in DC, the next you are unwilling cargo. You are now a captive.
And that immediate forced immersion, that total lack of player agency right at the start, that's absolutely critical to what the developers were aiming for with it.
No, totally. The sources confirm this DLC was a major passion project. Guys like Emil Pagliarulo, Jeff Gardner, they were apparently heavily researching and just fascinated by alien conspiracy theories, like deep dives into Roswell, Area 51, all that classic stuff.
So this wasn't just Like a random side quest they tacked on at the end.
Not at all. It was Bethesda leaning hard into those 1950s pulp sci-fi tropes. You know, the kind where alien abduction is immediate, it's jarring, often pretty terrifying. It deliberately shifts the game's genre.
A post-apocalyptic exploration.
To pure, unadulterated pulp horror, almost. At least initially, that waking up sequence.
Oh, God, yeah. And what immediately follows that terror is a massive dose of player frustration because you wake up strapped to a table mid-experimentation in this sterile cryo lab.
Standard alien probing scenario.
Exactly. And you are stripped bare. All your gear, every unique weapon you painstakingly collected, every piece of scavenged power armor you lovingly repaired, gone. Poof.
And that stripping of gear, that is such a key point of player frustration. It's a classic game mechanic, right? Designed to induce vulnerability, make you feel weak again.
Yeah, start from scratch.
But players absolutely loathed it in DLCs like Operation Anchorage back in Fallout 3 or Dead Money over in New Vegas. You spend hours establishing your character progression, getting the perfect loadout.
Only for the narrative to just hit the reset button. It feels cheap sometimes.
It really can. And the analogy here is crystal clear. This isn't just a quest starting point. It's a straight-up horror movie trope. You know, the captive waking up mid-experimentation, totally powerless, maybe missing a kidney.
Hopefully not missing a kidney. But you're not totally alone, are you? You immediately see Soma.
Right, Soma, a slaver from the post-war capital Wasteland. Not exactly Captain America, is she?
No kidding.
Yeah.
Represents kind of the worst of the Wasteland, maybe. And your immediate objective to escape? It's not some complex hacking puzzle or finding a hidden key card.
Nope, it's staging a diversion, specifically a fist fight.
You are literally forced by the game's objectives to start swinging at your fellow captive Soma just to distract the Zetan guards patrolling outside the cell.
It's so bizarre, like, hey, let's punch each other senseless so the aliens look over here.
And somehow, it works,
Yeah.
allowing you to overpower the guards when they come in, grab their shock batons or whatever alien cattle prods they use.
Alien stun batons, yeah. It's desperate, it's totally unconventional, and it perfectly establishes the inherently ridiculous, almost darkly comedic, chaotic tone of the entire damn shit.
It's like Fallout's dark sense of humor is cranked up to 11, even under alien duress. But the ridiculousness truly really escalates when you realize who else is on ice.
Oh man, the companions. This is where it goes from weird sci-fi horror to just pure, unadulterated absurdity.
Right. Once you escape that initial holding cell, you start finding other cryopods.
Right.
And you start thawing out other abductees the Zetans have apparently collected over centuries, millennia. Who knows?
The resulting squad you assemble is just,
Yeah.
it's pure post-apocalyptic, time-traveling insanity. It is, without exaggeration, perhaps the most absurd RPG party ever assembled in a video game.
Let's break down this motley crew. You start with Sally.
Right, Sally. A little girl.
Yeah.
Seems innocent enough, but she becomes your de facto guide through the ship's confusing layout. Why? Because she was apparently abducted shortly after the Great War.
So like 200 years ago.
Pretty much, meaning she has spent nearly 2 centuries either awake and hiding, or in cryostasis, or some combination, just living on this alien vessel. She's essentially the ship's resident expert, the one who knows the ventilation shafts, the security protocols, because she grew up there in a way.
That's incredibly bleak when you think about it. A child prisoner for 200 years. But yeah, she's literally the only person on board who has any grasp of the way out. Then you meet the characters who really just shatter any semblance of normalcy.
Enter Toshiro Kago.
Toshiro Kago, who is, and the sources are explicit about this, literally a samurai from Japan's Edo period.
Not just like a samurai, an actual samurai. The sources confirm this means he was plucked from somewhere in the late 16th or early 17th century.
Think about that. He has absolutely no frame of reference for anything after 1700, let alone radios, nuclear war, or freaking spaceship orbiting the Earth.
Imagine being snatched from feudal Japan, frozen solid for centuries, thawed out on an alien starship miles above a planet you wouldn't recognize, surrounded by weird gray aliens, and then being handed, like, an alien atomizer.
The culture shock doesn't even begin to cover it. It's astronomical.
Then moving forward a bit in time, you meet Paulson. Paulson, the quintessential Old West cowboy, probably from the late 19th century. He likely views the whole situation as some sort of loco fever dream involving futuristic train robbers and advanced smoke signals that shoot lasers.
He's got his trusty revolver, his duster coat, completely out of time, out of place. And rounding out the time travelers, we have Elliot Terkorian.
Elliot's interesting because he's closer to our time, relatively speaking. He's a U.S. Army combat medic, but he was abducted from Anchorage during the pivotal resource wars.
So pre-Great War, but during the conflict that led up to it. likely sometime between 2066 and 2077.
Exactly. So he's a pre-war veteran. He actually fought the Chinese. He gives you a completely different perspective on the technology, the history, compared to the Lone Wanderer's post-apocalyptic viewpoint.
Yeah.
He understands the military context, maybe recognizes some of the derived tech.
And then, circling back, there's Soma, the slaver we punched earlier.
Right. The charming Soma who represents the lowest rung of current post-war wasteland society. A survivor, sure, but a pretty nasty one.
So let's recap this party. A Wastelander protagonist, a cowboy from the 1800s, a little girl who's secretly 200 years old, a pre-war combat medic from the Sino-American War, and a samurai from feudal Japan.
Walk onto an alien ship. It sounds like the setup for the best, most unhinged tabletop RPG session ever conceived.
Absolutely. And the sources confirm that fans universally adored the concept of this absurd cultural clash, this impossible team-up, fighting side by side against little green men. It's brilliant on paper.
The narrative potential is just fantastic. So much room for interesting interactions, misunderstandings, unique perspectives on the situation.
And this is the first major community criticism that comes up again and again. These characters were severely underutilized.
Massively underutilized. That's the general consensus across the board. They ended up being a little more than unique cardboard cutouts. Interesting set pieces, maybe, rather than fully fleshed out companions.
Their interactions were incredibly simplistic, right? Mostly just generic combat barks or maybe one or two lines about wanting to go home.
Yeah. They followed you, they shot at aliens, sometimes hitting them, and that was about it. None of them offered complex quest lines or deep dialogue trees or anything that really explored the incredible potential of their bizarre, century-spanning backstories.
It felt like such a missed opportunity. You have these amazing ingredients and the final dish is just kind of bland.
Exactly. They're basically just uniquely skinned pack mules who occasionally fire a laser pistol. Which leads us to one of the darker yet most frequently commented upon aspects of this DLC, specifically involving Paulson, the cowboy.
Oh yeah, getting his gear.
Right. The sources, they very dryly note that to acquire his unique, highly desirable weapon, Paulson's .44 Magnum revolver, which is pretty powerful, the easiest way, often the only reliable way, is to, well, orchestrate his death. Or just let the aliens conveniently take him out while you happen to be looking the other way.
Or, just shoot him yourself when nobody's looking.
And here's the really fucked up part, the kicker. The game treats the premeditated murder of this poor displaced man from the 19th century who literally just wants to see his wife again with complete and utter apathy.
Seriously. No consequences.
Zero. The sources confirm killing him yourself results in no karma loss, no negative consequences, and literally nobody comments on him dying. Sally doesn't care. Elliot doesn't care. Toshiro doesn't care. He just vanishes. And you get his gun.
Wow. That speaks volumes, doesn't it? About the value of human life when there's an inventory upgrade on the line in the Fallout universe.
It's a moment of genuinely dark, maybe even accidental systemic humor that perfectly highlights the writing failure. They created this amazing concept, a tragic cowboy plucked from history, but completely failed to capitalize on the emotional potential.
Instead, yeah, he just becomes a piece of loot for the player to acquire and dispense with silently.
And that kind of narrative laziness, however darkly comedic you might find it, really frustrated players who were hoping for, something deeper, a connection with their bizarre crew, not just a shopping list.
Totally understandable. Okay, so the concept is wild, the companions are cool but shallow. Let's move on to how the actual DLC plays. Right, Section 2. Moving on from the fantastic but shallow concept to the actual boots-on-the-ground experience. Or, I guess, the boots-on-the-weird alien steel experience.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where the conversation generally turns sour very, very quickly. The sources repeatedly call out the execution as where Mothership Zeta truly falls flat on its weird three-fingered face.
The biggest complaint, the one you see referenced absolutely everywhere, is what the community basically calls the corridor conundrum.
Ugh, yes, the corridor conundrum. The sources are almost completely unified in describing the gameplay here as extremely linear. It's called a boring slog, and most damningly, a corridor shooter.
Which is like the antithesis of Fallout, right?
Completely. The open world exploration, the branching paths, the complex RPG choices, all the strengths of Fallout 3 are basically sacrificed entirely for what feels like a clunky, sometimes poorly optimized first-person shooter confined within these incredibly tight, restrictive geometric hallways.
It's the space dungeon feel, but taken to an extreme. Yeah, players complain constantly about just hallway after hallway shooting aliens in the head. That's the core loop.
And doing it against what many termed a nondescript purple-ish background. Environmentally, the entire ship, from the cryolabs where you start, to the robot assembly area, the waste disposal, the bridge, it's all viewed as severely repetitive.
Yeah, lacking the variety, the visual storytelling, the environmental interest you get from exploring the ruins of DC, or even the other pre-war installations like the vaults, which usually have unique layouts and stories baked in.
Here it's just more metal corridors, maybe slightly different lighting. And that intense repetition is made exponentially worse by the DLC's length.
Right, people felt it went on way too long for what it was.
Definitely. While the sources estimate other simulation-based DLCs like Operation Anchorage were maybe a quick 2-hour run, maybe 3 if you explored everything.
A nice little contained experience.
Exactly. Zeta, on the other hand, felt like it overstayed its welcome dramatically. For players trying to find all the logs, all the unique items, completionists, it took upwards of 4 to 6 hours, maybe even longer if you struggled with the combat.
And because the environment was so visually and structurally redundant, those 4, 5, 6 hours felt exponentially longer.
Yeah.
It led to genuine player fatigue. Like, are we still doing this?
I saw one source, a player comment, noting that in the time it took them to finish Zeta, they could have completed far superior, tightly designed, classic linear shooters from that era. Yet Zeta felt sort of vacuous and mechanically weak, especially compared to the depth of the base game it was attached to.
And compounding this issue, making the slog even sloggier, was the combat grinding. This was driven by 2 main factors: really limited enemy variety, and crucially, some seriously poor level scaling.
Yeah, the enemy roster is tiny. You are primarily fighting just 3 basic types of enemies throughout the entire ship.
Okay, what are they?
You've got the standard aliens, the Zetans themselves in their different ranks. You've got the abominations.
You're to those creepy, genetically engineered human Zetan hybrids you find shambling around.
Yeah, those guys. Unsettling, but not that different tactically. And then you have 3 flavors of robotic drones: the Guardian drones, support drones, and the bigger experimental drones. And that's basically it. That's your entire combat roster for 6 hours.
Wow. Not a lot to mix things up.
Not at all. But the real killer was the level scaling. It was simply brutal, particularly for players who, quite logically, saved the DLC until the end of their playthrough when they were at a high level.
Yeah, you finish the main quest, you do the other DLCs, you're level 20, maybe level 30 if you have Broken Steel. You feel powerful.
Right, but then you get beamed up, and suddenly those Zetans and their drones transition from being, reasonably challenging foes into genuine bullet sponges, just soaking up insane amounts of damage.
So your high-level gear suddenly feels weak again.
Exactly. The sources claim this completely contradicted the expected power progression curve. It made the DLC nigh impossible, or at least incredibly tedious for high-level characters, using conventional tactics and weapons.
To the point where players actually had to lower the difficulty.
Yeah, numerous sources mention players being forced to drop the game's difficulty setting down to very easy, or even easy, just to make the combat bearable and progress the narrative without spending 10 minutes killing a single basic drone.
Man, that is the ultimate sign of flawed game design, isn't it?
Yeah.
If your core balance is so off that players have to fundamentally change the difficulty settings just to get through the content, something is broken internally.
It really is. But let's play devil's advocate for a second here, based on some fan theories and maybe reading between the lines of the design complaints.
Okay.
If the developers knew the loot reward at the end and throughout was so ridiculously game-breakingly powerful, which we're definitely about to get into, is it possible they were using these incredibly tanky bullet sponge enemies as a deliberate gate?
Like a way to make you really earn the overpowered stuff.
Maybe. A way to ensure that only players who had already invested heavily in max-level gear, maxed out their combat perks, maybe even optimized their build specifically for energy weapons, could even survive long enough to claim that game-breaking power.
So maybe it wasn't just bad scaling, but a clumsy attempt at balancing the insane rewards.
It's a possibility. The sources suggest it could be a combination of both. Maybe some poor testing combined with a misguided attempt at gatekeeping the best loot. They certainly wanted players to feel challenged, not just waltz through.
But regardless of the intent, the result for the player, the community consensus, was just frustration. It felt less like a challenge and more like a clunky, punishing, repetitive grind.
Absolutely. However, as you kind of alluded to, if the stick is that repetitive and tedious, the carrot has got to be enormous.
Has to be worth it somehow.
And in Mothership Zeta, oh boy, the carrot is ridiculously overpowered, game-changing loot. This brings us to the great loot debate.
Yes. Because for many, many players, The only motivation strong enough to push them through those endless purple corridors and those bullet sponge aliens was the massive payout at the end.
They viewed the DLC less as an interesting sci-fi experience and more as, like, an incredibly dangerous high-stakes arms dealer run.
Get in, grab the guns, get out.
Pretty much. And the arsenal players acquire is just legendary within the Fallout 3 community for its sheer power and the way it completely shifts the balance of the base game.
Okay, let's list some of the big hitters. We're talking about the alien disintegrator,
The alien atomizer, the atomic pulverizer, which is basically an alien shotgun,
the drone cannon, which fires those drone explosives.
and unique named items like the MPLX Nova Surge pistol. These weren't just slightly better guns, they were often leaps and bounds ahead of anything else available.
Okay, let's break down why these are considered game-breaking, not just throw out names. Take the alien disintegrator, probably the most infamous one.
Right. It operates on standard energy cells, which become fairly common later in the game, but the damage it delivers is catastrophic. It often seems to bypass traditional armor resistances, has an incredible rate of fire for an energy weapon, and enemies killed by it often just vaporize into blue ash.
So if you manage to grab that early on, maybe by doing Zeta right after leaving Vault 101,
Which some crazy people did.
then the entire capital Wasteland suddenly becomes this absolute playground where you just point at super mutant overlords or death claws, pull the trigger a few times, and poof, instant blue ash pile.
It removes all challenge. And the MPLX Nova Surge, that unique pistol, another powerhouse, it fires an immediate beam like a laser pistol, but its hidden strength is its ridiculously high, unique critical hit multiplier.
Ah, so for VATS builds or highlight characters.
Oh, it's absolutely devastating for single targets. Headshots in DTS become almost guaranteed one-hit kills on almost anything. So yeah, players purposefully rush Zeta early.
They'd often combine it with doing Operation Anchorage first, right?
Right.
Because Anchorage also gives you that unbreakable, winterized T-51B power armor and some other decent gear.
Exactly. Do Anchorage for the armor and Gus rifle, then immediately trigger Zeta, suffer through the corridors, grab the disintegrator and Nova Surge.
And boom, you emerge back into the Wasteland, basically as a god-tier killing machine before you've even hit level 15.
You could just plow through the rest of the main quest, the other DLCs, whatever. It created this actual new game plus effect, but within a single playthrough. You became massively overpowered incredibly early.
It fundamentally breaks the difficulty curve Bethesda presumably intended for the base game. It gives the player this unfair, yet, let's be honest, incredibly satisfying cosmic advantage. Who doesn't want to disintegrate mole rats with an alien death ray?
Huh. True. But the truly goated piece of loot, according to many hardcore players, the one that often gets overlooked in the rush for shiny energy weapons, is actually the alien epoxy.
The what now? Epoxy, like glue.
Kinda. It's the small consumable item. It looks like a tube of weird alien liquid repairing agent. Now remember, in the original Fallout 3 design, especially before the Broken Steel DLC raised the level cap and introduced the jury rigging perk from New Vegas.
Right, repairing unique gear was a nightmare.
A total nightmare. You had to find an exact duplicate of a unique item just to repair it with a vendor or a workbench, which was often completely impossible for things like, say, Lincoln's Repeater or special armor sets. They'd break, and that was it.
So your best stuff became unusable really fast.
Exactly. The alien epoxy, however, this little tube of goo could repair any weapon or armor regardless of type, including the unique alien weapons themselves, like the disintegrator or the katana, including unique armors like Paulson's outfit or the samurai armor.
Whoa, so it completely bypasses the normal repair system limitations.
Completely. It offered massive utility outside of combat. It essentially solved the weapon and armor durability problem that plagued high-level players who like using unique gear. You just needed to find enough tubes of this stuff.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's arguably more valuable long-term than just raw damage output.
Many players argued exactly that. It's a silent hero of the DLC's reward structure, offering practical, long-term game utility that, in some ways, far surpassed the immediate gratification of the Pew Pew energy rifles.
Okay, that makes sense. But then we hit the final massive critique of the mechanics, which seems almost deliberately designed to annoy people. Accessibility and replayability after you finish the main quest.
Yeah, this one still baffles me. Once the main quest, the one called This Galaxy Ain't Big Enough, is completed, you deal with the enemy ship, you become captain.
You're the king of the castle.
Yeah.
Or a spaceship.
Right. But then the developers made the absolutely bizarre choice to lock and seal off most of the mothership permanently. Like, doors just become inaccessible, force fields reactivate.
Wait, seriously, after you spend hours fighting through it.
Yeah.
Seriously, that is just pure, unadulterated player frustration fuel. You spend all that time fighting through this immense, potentially interesting, if repetitive, spaceship, only for the narrative to slam most of its doors permanently in your face the moment you finish the story.
Why would they do that?
No good reason given. It severely punishes completionists. Terribly.
Because if you missed anything.
Exactly. If you missed any of the unique one-off items, like maybe you didn't find Paulsing's revolver, or you couldn't locate the unique katana that's hidden away in a specific trash incinerator area right before the generators.
Or maybe more importantly for achievements, the alien captive recorded logs.
Precisely. Those logs provide backstory, flavor text, and they're needed for the Alien Archivist achievement or trophy if you miss even one of those logs because it was in a section that gets locked down after the finale.
You are permanently locked out of that content for that playthrough. No going back.
Correct. Which is just maddening game design. Now, technically, the Lone Wanderer can return to the ship. It becomes a functional, albeit very limited, home base.
How do you get back up there?
There's a homing beacon you activate near the original crash site, near the Theta craft. It lets you teleport back up to the bridge, I believe, and maybe a couple of other small areas like the observation deck.
But that's it, just the bridge.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The utility is minimal because you can no longer explore the vast majority of the environment. You can't revisit the cryolabs, the robot assembly, the waste disposal. You can't encounter any remaining enemies or find any missed items in those areas.
So it's basically just a giant floating trophy room with a nice view.
That's a perfect description. A trophy base, not a functional, replayable dungeon. It really reinforces that feeling many players had, that the developers maybe bit off more than they could chew with the scope of the ship, and they just ran out of time or resources to implement a proper post-quest exploration mode, so they just locked it down.
Lazy or rushed. Either way, it's frustrating. And we absolutely cannot gloss over the technical issues that plagued this DLC at launch, right?
Yeah.
Especially for certain console users.
Oh God, no. The sources are absolutely filled with complaints, particularly from PlayStation 3 players back in the day. Reports of constant freezing, severe glitching, quests not updating, companions getting stuck.
Or even just outright soft locks, where the game just stops progressing entirely.
Yeah, often right at the beginning. People reported getting stuck during the initial abduction sequence or the medical examination procedure, unable to even start the main quest properly.
That is a massive barrier to entry for content that is already, as we've established, pretty mechanically divisive even when it works.
Totally. If you can't even play the damn thing without it crashing, you're definitely not going to appreciate the nuances of its repetitive corridor design.
Fair point. Okay, let's pivot. Let's move away from the structural flaws of the ship itself and dive into the deep end. The Zetan lore and the potential canonicity crisis this DLC sparked. This is where things get really heated for the hardcore fans. All right, Section 3. Let's pivot from the shaky structure of the ship itself to the core controversy of this whole DLC. The Zetan lore. Who are these guys? And how does their suddenly prominent role threaten, or at least massively complicate, the very foundations of the established Fallout setting?
This is the big one for a lot of people. So the Zetans, as they are officially referred to in later Bethesda titles like Fallout 4 and 76, they are basically the prototypical humanoid, gray-like alien beings. Think Roswell, X-Files, classic abduction imagery.
Little green men, or gray, I guess.
Mostly grayish green, yeah. Biologically, they're distinct. They have that sort of hunched stature, large heads, big black eyes, and notably, tridactyl digits, 3 primary fingers and a thumb, basically. That's a key visual identifier.
And they're traditionally associated with the Zeta Reticuli star system in sci-fi lore, right? That's the name.
Exactly. Bethesda leans right into that classic sci-fi trope of interstellar travelers coming from that specific, real binary star system. It grounds their alien nature in existing UFO mythology.
Do we see different types of them?
We do, primarily on the ship. There seem to be 2 main body types encountered in Zeta. You have the taller Zetans, who function more as guards, technicians, and command staff. And then you have the smaller ones, who look much more like the classic little green men or greys, often found doing more menial tasks or maybe used for ground missions, reconnaissance.
Okay, and what do these guys eat? Anything interesting there?
Interesting might be generous. We know very little about their diet other than what we see in their storage areas or being processed. It seems to consist of these bizarre, frankly unappetizing worm-like creatures, vermiforms. and some sort of cephalopod-esque squid-like things.
Yeah, space calamari and worms.
Doesn't look appealing, no. Their culture, at least as it's reflected by the architecture and environment of the mothership, seems incredibly Spartan, almost sterile.
How so?
Well, the architecture is purely functional. It's brutally geometric, lots of sharp angles, metallic surfaces, weird glowing panels. There's no decoration, no art, nothing that looks recreational.
Just workstations and labs.
Pretty much. They utilize those cryostasis chambers for sleeping or long-term storage, which indicates maybe a necessity for prolonged interstellar travel, or perhaps just a way to preserve their abductees, or even themselves.
And there's zero evidence anywhere on that massive ship of, like, entertainment, music, social spaces, anything beyond the mission.
Nothing discernible. Their entire culture, as presented, seems focused purely on work in progress, which in their case means centuries, possibly millennia, of abducting other species, analyzing them, experimenting on them, and collecting. Well, collecting everything.
Speaking of collecting,
Yeah.
we absolutely have to talk about the giddy-up Buttercup situation.
Oh god, yes. The giddy-up Buttercup. This seems to be the Zetan's seemingly sole point of genuine cultural interest, or maybe it's some kind of anthropological fascination. It's hard to tell. We're talking about that pre-war toy horse, right? The little rideable robot pony.
Yeah, that iconic, slightly creepy pre-war toy.
They not only collected it, we see evidence of this, like one appearing in the young abductee Sally's personal chamber, maybe given to her as a pacifier or a study subject.
Okay, weird, but maybe understandable.
But then there's that room. In one profoundly disturbing, almost ritualistic room discovered on the ship, they placed a giddy-up Buttercup toy at the center of what looks for all the world like a sacrificial shrine.
Surrounded by what?
Surrounded by human corpses, just piled up around this innocent little toy horse.
Jesus. Okay, that is messed up.
Right. That one single image, this cheerful, retro-futuristic children's toy being apparently worshipped or studied amidst a pile of human remains, it somehow encapsulates the Zetan's alien, disturbing, and utterly inscrutable fascination with humanity far better than any lengthy holotate explanation ever could.
It's pure visual horror. Maximum contrast.
Exactly. But moving beyond their weird hobbies, their history on Earth, as established or heavily implied by Mothership Zeta, is what's truly significant and potentially damaging for the established Fallout universe lore.
Because Zeta solidifies that these guys weren't just a one-off random encounter, like the crashed ship in Fallout 1 or 2.
Precisely. Mothership Zeta establishes pretty firmly that the Zetans have a long, consistent history of pervasive, deliberate interference and observation on Earth. They've been here for a long time, and they've been busy.
We have actual timeline evidence from the companions, right? Toshiro Kago, the samurai.
He proves they were abducting people from Japan's Edo period. That pushes their confirmed activity back to the 16th or 17th centuries at least. They weren't just a 20th century phenomenon.
And their activity clearly escalated significantly in the decades leading up to the Great War in 2077.
Massively. We know from logs and context that they were definitely known to the US government as early as the 1960s. There's mention of the abduction of a Colonel Hartigan around that time.
And the government wasn't just ignoring them.
Hell no. The sources confirm that the US Space Administration, the USA, Fallout's version of NASA, even launched a dedicated space station called Valiant 1 specifically to observe the Zetan mothership orbiting Earth.
Wow. So there was high-level pre-war espionage and counter-surveillance happening between humans and aliens in orbit.
Absolutely. Confirmed by the sources tied to the DLC's background lore. And this knowledge wasn't strictly confined to top-secret government files either. It seems like it leaked, or was perhaps even deliberately seeded.
How so?
Well, think about pre-war popular culture within the Fallout universe. The comic books like Invaders from Zeta, the animatronics you see later in places like Nuka World, B-movies mentioned in terminals like Invaders from Beyond Our Galaxy.
They all feature aliens that look suspiciously like Zetans.
Exactly. They all featured surprisingly accurate depictions of these gray-like beings and their flying saucers. This suggests either the government was incredibly bad at suppressing the truth, or maybe they were subtly preparing the populace, or perhaps Zetan influence was just that pervasive.
And critically, the government wasn't just observing these aliens, they were getting their tech, weren't they?
Oh yeah. This is maybe the most crucial lore point. The U.S. military-industrial complex was actively reverse engineering captured or discovered Zetan technology in highly classified black-budget projects. We're talking about the likely origin or significant advancement of plasma weaponry.
Which becomes a battlefield staple later on.
Right. The existence of things like biogel, that weird biological energy source or coolant found in some pre-war installations.
And maybe most disturbingly, potential links to the development of advanced artificial intelligence like the ZAX supercomputers or even, speculatively, Skynet precursors.
The connections are strongly implied in some of the deeper lore sources. There was even a shadowy pre-war conspiracy group mentioned, called Quere Verum, who were apparently trying to expose the government's use of alien tech. They even managed to steal and briefly possess the MPLX Novasurge pistol as hard proof before presumably being silenced.
So this technological integration, this flow of alien tech into the human military machine, that's the critical piece here, right? The Zetans weren't just watching. They were, intentionally or not, providing the tools for the escalation of human conflict.
It certainly looks that way. And furthermore, and this is a key detail that reinforces the setup for our final provocation later, the sources confirm that the remnants of the U.S. shadow government, the post-war enclave,
The bad guys trying to reclaim America with purified genetics.
those guys. They were also actively studying Zetan remains and technology they recovered, presumably for their own nefarious purposes. Enclave science logs mention dissecting alien corpses and wanting to destroy all the specimens before their research labs collapsed or were discovered by outsiders.
So the Enclave, the ultimate symbol of pre-war government corruption and technological overreach, relied heavily on dissecting these aliens for their own power.
Seems so. So if the Zetans were so deeply embedded in the pre-war power structures, if they were trading or leaking technology, if they were abducting military personnel like Elliot Turkorian from active war zones,
This raises the ultimate explosive question that absolutely divides the Fallout fan base, especially the lore purists.
what is the Zetans' ultimate role in the Great War itself? Did they cause it?
This is the absolute core of the lore controversy surrounding Mothership Zeta. The source material, both in the game and in behind-the-scenes info, reveals a profound, almost visceral fan objection to any suggestion that aliens were directly responsible for or even heavily involved in triggering the nuclear apocalypse of 2077.
The problem lies in a combination of ambiguous implications left in the final product and knowledge of specific cut content that was even more explicit.
Right. We know from developer comments or game file analysis that there was originally a blanked-out holotape intended to explicitly blame the Zetans for initiating the Great War, content that was, probably very wisely, cut by Bethesda before release, likely to avoid a massive fan revolt.
Probably a good call. However, the finished DLC still contains that highly provocative audio log, the one where you overhear a captured U.S. authority figure, maybe a general, maybe a politician, being interrogated by the Zetans, apparently for nuclear launch codes.
Which strongly implies they weren't just passive observers in those final moments.
The implication remains incredibly strong, even with the explicit "they did it" tape removed. If aliens were actively seeking to extract nuclear launch codes from human military or government authorities right around the time the bombs fell, it strongly suggests they were trying to directly manipulate or perhaps even trigger the final nuclear exchange.
And for the lore purists, this is just unacceptable, heresy.
Absolutely. Because the narrative heart, the core message of the entire Fallout franchise, has always been that the apocalypse was a self-inflicted wound. It's a cautionary tale about human nature, about greed, jingoism, nationalism, resource conflicts, unchecked technological ambition leading to inevitable self-destruction.
Humanity did this to itself, that's the point.
That's the point. And fans argue quite passionately that suggesting aliens pulled the strings, or nudged the final domino, or actually caused the nuclear exchange. It drastically cuts at the heart of the world's story, as one source put it. It removes human agency from our own catastrophe.
It cheapens the tragedy, doesn't it? If the greatest, most defining disaster in human history, the near total annihilation of civilization, wasn't ultimately our own damn fault, but was merely like a side effect of some little green goober's weird observation project going wrong.
Or worse, deliberate manipulation. It fundamentally changes the meaning of the Wasteland. It shifts blame outwards, away from humanity.
Yeah, I can see why people would hate that.
Yeah.
Despite this passionate resistance, despite the controversy, Bethesda seems to have doubled down, haven't they? The canonical presence of Zetans has only escalated since Fallout 3.
Oh, absolutely. While Fallout, New Vegas, developed by Obsidian, mostly relegated the aliens to an Easter egg tied to the optional Wild Wasteland perk, almost a nod to their potentially non-canon wacky status for some players.
Bethesda took back the reins and fully embraced them.
Completely. In Fallout 4, they are officially named Zetans in terminals and dialogue. Their presence is reinforced with another crashed ship encounter, complete with a living, hostile Z-10 pilot you can fight.
And wasn't there stuff in the Nuka World DLC for Fallout 4 too?
Yep. Nuka World further solidifies their reality by introducing the Hubologists, that Scientology-esque cult. They claim their founder met a divine star father who gifted them advanced Zetan technology, which explains their weird spaceship ride and gamma guns.
So tying them into Wasteland factions now.
And then, in the current era, Fallout 76 throws basically all caution to the wind regarding Z10 integration. They've become a prominent and recurring enemy faction.
Through seasonal events and stuff?
Exactly. They appear in massive map-wide public events like the Invaders from Beyond update, where players have to fight off waves of Z10s and their drones. They're even retroactively linked to existing Appalachian folklore and cryptids, like the Flatwoods monster, suggesting they've been messing around in that region for a long, long time.
So, like it or not, the Zetans are definitely here to stay in the modern Fallout canon. Lore purists basically have to either find a way to accept their influence or just mentally compartmentalize and ignore vast swaths of new content.
It's a tough spot for longtime fans who valued that original human-centric cautionary tale. The aliens definitely complicate things.
Hugely. Okay, so after all that lore-bending chaos, what happens at the end of Mothership Zeta? What's the legacy? Okay, Section 4. We're nearing the end of our transmission. So after the Lone Wanderer has endured the linear hellscape, navigated the endless boring corridors, defeated enough bullet sponges to earn their alien killing stripes.
And maybe murdered a cowboy for his gun.
Right, maybe that too. They successfully defeat the Zetan captain, presumably take charge of the bridge, and essentially take control of Mothership Zeta itself, which is now parked in orbit miles above the Earth.
This is such a staggering, yet often completely ignored canonical implication of the DLC. Think about it. The player character of Fallout 3, the Lone Wanderer, is now, canonically, a galaxy-traveling space wanderer.
They literally own an incredibly high-tech, spacefaring military vessel.
Exactly. This ownership should dramatically shift their status, their capabilities, their entire perspective on the wasteland below, even if the base game, upon your return, conveniently ignores the fact that you now have access to faster-than-light propulsion and freaking death ray technology parked upstairs.
Yeah, about that death rate. Let's talk about the actual conclusion of the main quest line on the ship. In the final battle, you have to deal with another attacking Zetan vessel, right?
Correct. A rival Zetan ship shows up, presumably unhappy about the management change, and starts firing. To defeat it, you have to man the main bridge cannon, the mothership's primary weapon, its death ray.
Which looks pretty damn powerful in the cutscene. We're talking payloads comparable to tactical nuclear weapons, judging by the blast.
Easily. And the sources confirm the absolutely bonkers, almost comical collateral damage involved in using this weapon. That single act of self-defense, firing the death ray to destroy the enemy vessel.
Yep. What did it hit?
It casually super nukes a significant chunk of Canada in the process. The beam visibly strikes the Earth, causing a massive explosion somewhere over North America, generally accepted by fans and trajectory analysis to be somewhere in Canada.
Wait, you blow up part of Canada?
Seriously? Apparently. And this detail, this apocalyptic destruction inflicted on an entire nation, it is entirely and hilariously ignored upon the Lone Wanderer's return to the capital Wasteland. Nobody mentions it, no consequences, no news reports, nothing.
Wow. That just highlights the profound isolation of this DLC from the main narrative, doesn't it? It's like its own little pocket universe.
Yeah.
You can accidentally commit orbital genocide and nobody bats an eye back on Earth.
Oops, sorry, Canada. Kind of glass, Saskatchewan. Anyway, back to looking for water purifiers. It's absurd.
Truly absurd.
Yeah.
But beyond the WMDs, the technological marvels you technically now possess, or at least have access to, are profound, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. Forget the weapons for a second. The ship itself showcases technology light years ahead of anything on post-war Earth. We're talking functional, faster-than-light FTL propulsion.
Which is a concept that even the Advanced Secretive Institute back in the Commonwealth with their teleportation matrix in Fallout 4 couldn't fully crack.
Right. The Zetans have actual FTL drives. They have those advanced cryostasis labs capable of preserving subjects for centuries, though seemingly with some risk, as seen with Colonel Hartigan possibly dying or being damaged in the process.
And the healing archways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those biomedical healing archways scattered around the ship, those might be the single most advanced piece of medical technology seen in the entire Fallout universe up to that point.
What do they do again?
You just walk through them and they instantly cure all your ailments, poisons, diseases, addictions. They remove all your radiation exposure instantly, and they even repair any crippled limbs without the need for stim packs, doctor's bags, or paying caps to a doctor.
That's insane. That's like free, instant, perfect healthcare.
It really is. It's technology that is orders of magnitude beyond even the peak pre-war capabilities of the US government or corporations like Vaultec, and now the Lone Wanderer technically has access to it.
So, okay, we've covered the janky start, the weird companions, the repetitive gameplay, the amazing loot, the controversial lore, the Canada nuking finale. Let's try to synthesize this vast ocean of polarized community opinion. What is the definitive final verdict on Mothership Zeta? Where does it stand?
I think it boils down pretty cleanly to that classic critique. Great concept, poor execution. That seems to be the most consistent takeaway across almost all sources, positive or negative.
The potential was huge, but the follow-through was lacking.
Exactly. The functional and conceptual positives are undeniable, and people do praise them. It absolutely provided a refreshing, massive change of environment from the endless brown and gray of the bombed-out capital Wasteland. That visual break was needed for some.
The alien energy weapons are insanely fun to use, even if they break the game. They feel powerful, look cool, sound cool.
Totally. The companions, Toshiro, Paulson, Sally, Elliot, they are conceptually incredible, genuinely creative additions, even if they ended up being criminally shallow in their implementation. The idea of them is fantastic.
And the alien epoxy. Can't forget the MVP.
Never forget the alien epoxy. That invaluable utility loot solved a major, persistent long-term gameplay issue for unique item users. Huge practical value.
Okay, so those are the good points. But the negative consensus seems way louder, right?
It really does, especially regarding the core gameplay loop. It is just too linear for a Fallout DLC. The ship environments are boringly repetitive, visually monotonous. The potentially amazing characters are criminally underutilized, just becoming tag-along shooters.
The potential lore damage is significant, especially for players invested in the original themes of the series.
Yeah.
That aliens cause the war implication, even if subtle, really rankles people.
And then there are the technical aspects. The whole experience was riddled with bugs, crashes, and freezes, particularly on PS3. And the baffling decision to lock off most of the ship after the main quest completion just adds insult to injury, killing replayability, and frustrating completionists.
So
Overall, it's often ranked as perhaps the weakest, or at least the most flawed and divisive of the Fallout 3 DLCs. But many sources also concede it's still kind of fun to play through at least once.
just for the sheer ridiculous spectacle of it all, the B-movie absurdity.
Yeah, for the change of pace, the crazy premise, the OP loot, and the chance to shoot aliens in the face with their own guns before accidentally nuking Canada, it's a fun, dumb, flashy romp that just happens to potentially undermine the entire thematic foundation of the franchise. No big deal.
Huh, indeed. It's a fun, dumb romp that gives you a god-tier cosmic edge against the irradiated cockroaches and super mutants waiting for you back on Earth.
Which brings us, finally, to our final, maybe more serious provocation for you, the listener, to chew on.
Lay it on us.
Okay. We've established that the Zetans have likely been involved in observing and interfering with Earth for centuries, maybe longer. We know definitively they were providing, leaking, or allowing access to highly advanced, dangerous technology, plasma weapons, biogel, AI concepts, maybe even FTL physics hints.
And they were providing this tech, directly or indirectly, to the very factions like the pre-war U.S. government, the military-industrial complex, and later the Enclave, that were actively driving humanity down the path to global resource wars and ultimately nuclear annihilation.
They were constantly, maybe deliberately, maybe carelessly, injecting the means for greater, more efficient human destruction into an already unstable, jingoistic, paranoid global system. They actively aided, or at least technologically enabled, the very groups whose actions led to the end of the world.
So the question is, were they really just passive observers, these supposedly neutral scientists just peacefully studying the weird monkeys on Planet 3?
Or, by constantly injecting this advanced destructive technology into these volatile human societies, generation after generation, were the Zetans actually the chaotic accelerants of human destruction? Did their interference ensure that the apocalypse was never really a matter of if humanity would fall, but simply a matter of when the Zetans delivered the next cool, lethal toy that tipped the balance?
Goddamn, that's heavy. Are they merely observers, or are they, in their own detached alien way, truly the architects or at least the enablers of humanity's self-destruction? Are the little green men the real villains of the whole damn story?
Something for you to ponder next time you're exploring a crashed saucer. Or maybe just vaporizing a rad scorpion with your alien disintegrator. Who really put that weapon in your hands and why?
Wow. Okay. We'll leave you wrestling with that existential dread. A fantastic, if utterly messed up, place to end our dive into Mothership Zeta. We will, as promised, be back soon with our deep dive into the Commonwealth and Fallout 4. Until then, stay safe in the Wasteland, or perhaps, maybe stay grounded. This has been the Deep Dive.